जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम बच्चों।
वालेकुम सलाम।
ऑलराइट, चले जी, बाकी सब आते जाएंगे इंशाल्लाह। सो बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम, लेट्स बिगिन। चले जी, I appreciate that all of you are on time. Inshallah, my practice is that for this online group class, I usually begin at the max 2 minutes into the lesson. So that sets the precedence for others to come on time. Otherwise, aapko pata hai ki everybody is like, they don't come on time. Okay. All right, Challenge. So, Assalamu alaikum once again for those of you who have just joined. All right, so inshallah, today we are directly jumping into our first topic. That's the cell structure and organization. There's one thing I want you people to understand. All of you except Niaz were taking Biology 5090. The syllabus for O-levels, Cambridge 5090 has changed a lot. Lekin the good news for you is that it has changed after May, June 21. Yani majority of the changes that have happened, they don't concern you. I don't know if it's a good news or bad news for you, but I think it's a good news because they've added a lot of stuff. They're basically trying to make it closer to A-levels biology. I'm not saying that it's that difficult. Lekin they've included some new topics which were not there. They've removed topics like drugs and locomotion, but don't worry, nothing has changed for you. So inshallah, all what I will do is follow the pattern. Niaz, I want you to do me a favor. Once the lesson is over today, I want you to send me the specification that you're using for your subject. And if I'm not wrong, your course code is 0610. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I'm sure that you know what the specification and the syllabus document is. Don't tell me that you don't know what that is.
So,
Okay, great.
no, I know.
Okay, great. So just share that with me. I just want to see that the one that you're using, is it the updated one or whatever the case is? Okay, and then inshallah, I will get back to you personally, your differences with our specification, inshallah. All right, challenge, bismillah. So I'm gonna directly jump into the lesson. Our topic is cell structure and organization. Since this is supposed to be a crash course, since this is our first class today, usually this topic is a small topic and it should not take more than one lesson. But since one of the features that you will witness on my class is once we're doing the topic, the past papers will go hand in hand. So I mean, because I believe that's a very good practice and that's something that's required for a good grade. So I'm going to begin with an analogy. As you can see on the screen, this is a building or a portion of a building, okay? And since we're trying to talk about cells, we need to make some sense and have a bigger picture of what we are trying to talk about in the first place. This may not seem relevant to the exact syllabus content, but trust me, it works this way. Now, if I were to ask you to look at this diagram and think about this, this is an entire system, a building, for example. Let's suppose this is your school building. I don't know if that's good, looks good or not, but let's assume this is part of your school building. Okay, this building is supposed to be an entire system, which has, if I consider the example of your school, it has the office, it has the classrooms, maybe it has the canteen, the washrooms, and I don't know. I mean, all of what you see in a typical school. If I were to ask one simple question, tell me what is the very basic thing that this entire unit is made up of? What do you think will be your answer and why? And by the way, this picture shows that thing quite evident. What do you think?
Bricks.
Bricks, exactly. I mean, it's the basic unit. I mean, if you like, that's the basic unit, okay? The basic unit is brick. Now, why am I giving you this example? You know, it really works for me. I usually in school, when I do this topic or whenever I do this topic with anybody, you have to understand cell in a very, in a dynamic way. Just don't think that thing to be as just a circle with some things on the inside and, you know, they have specific functions. No. A cell is a very small integral part of the very big picture. And that big picture is actually you yourself as an organism, okay? So now what I want to do is I want you to go back to this picture and think about this. So you have this basic unit and then you have this entire building. It's not just that you transition from this brick in one instance to this entire building. There are levels and steps that happen. So for example, the brick, lots and lots of bricks will combine to form what you can see. That's basically a wall, okay? And then if you look around the room that maybe you're sitting in, if I were to ask you, count the number of walls that this room is made up of. Well, my room has 1, 2, 3, 4 walls, and the roof wall, I don't know if you will call the floor as a wall, but I mean, it's composed of 5 walls. So the 5 walls, they make up basically a room, okay? And the house has different rooms, and then eventually it's an entire house. So the same thing goes for the cell. So a cell, you can see that when they combine together, they form something. Of course, this is something that we are going to talk about, the cells, the tissues, the organs, and the organ system. That's for the later part of this topic to come. But since we are beginning, so the following diagram that you can see are a bunch of animal cells, okay? So which means that they're the basic unit. So there are some points, some basic points that we need to understand about the cells. Now, since this is formally our first lesson, inshallah, I will not need to tell this thing again and again. Lekin, I think since it's the first time, let me guide you specifically how can you take maximum benefit of the lesson. Inshallah, I will be using multiple ways to deliver the lesson. That includes, as you can see, pictures, that includes PowerPoint slides, and that will also include me actually drawing on the board, writing on the board. So it's going to be a mixture of everything. The best way you can take maximum benefit of this is that whilst I'm explaining, you do take notes. Yes, after every lesson, I will be sharing the PDF of what I've taught, but don't let things pile up. Usually what students, they do is they're like, okay, inshallah, once I get all of the stuff, maybe over the weekend, I will take notes. And in the class, I just want to listen. Trust me, it doesn't work that way. Even if you think it works, it works better if you take notes all along. And if there is a point that you've missed, inshallah, you can always go back once you get the notes, okay? So let's come to point number 1 without any further ado. You can also see that I've highlighted and I've given different colors to some words. We need to understand that in the exam, the Cambridge, if you look at the marking schemes, I don't know if you've often looked at the mark schemes, but there are certain words that they highlight and they underline, which means that the usage of those words is important. If you don't use them, you don't score credit. So inshallah, all along the presentation, where you see things that I've highlighted with different colors, you have to understand that these are important terminologies. And you have to understand one more thing. When it comes to your Cambridge syllabus or your exam paper, picking and choosing the correct word is very important. There will be many instances when we will be doing a topic and you will see, I will be like, you don't have to use this word, you have to use this word. You don't have to use this word, you have to use this word, okay? So keep that thing in mind. Okay, so point number 1, cell is the basic unit of life, okay? And what I mean by basic unit of life is just like the example that I gave earlier, a basic unit of a school, for example, is a brick, and the basic unit of a living organism of a life is a cell. And usually the cell is made up of the following 3 things. It has the nucleus, as you can clearly see in this diagram. I'm not going into the functions at the moment, we're just trying to identify. And then you have the cytoplasm, which of course we know is this thing. And then you have the cell membrane, which is of course the outer boundary. So primarily, these are the 3 basic things that any of a typical cell will have, okay? The nucleus, the cytoplasm, and the cell membrane. Okay, another thing that we need to understand is that new cells are formed by divisions. It's not only the cells that you were born with, they remain with you till you die. No, your body is constantly making new cells. So the quote unquote old cells are the parent cells, as we call them. And then once they divide, you have the new cells, which are the daughter cells, as we call them. And inshallah, as you proceed in the syllabus, you will get comfortable with all of these terms that I'm using. Okay, so next point, point number 4, cell division becomes a means of transferring genetic material. We will talk about this thing, inshallah, in detail when we're doing reproduction and inheritance, the last topics. But since it has to do with the cells, you need to understand that during the act of cell division, when you, from an old cell, you're getting new cells, it's actually transferring something very important from the old cell, if you like, into the new cells. And that's the genetic material, the DNA, the genes actually. And the detail of which, of course, we're not going here at the moment. And the next point is, and that's a very important point, cells are often incapable of independent existence. Look at the picture on the top right side. And none of the cell is there in isolation. It's not alone. It needs the other cells in order for it to survive, okay? So they are incapable of independent existence. They can be modified to perform specific functions. We will talk about some specialized cells. Like for example, your red blood cell. I'm sure everybody knows what a red blood cell is. It's a specialized cell, which means it is specialized to carry oxygen. Once upon a time, the red blood cell was a normal cell. So it was just like a normal cell with a nucleus and all of that stuff. And then it became specialized. Something like this. Of course, that's the process of specialization, the detail of which, of course, we don't go. But again, the fact that a cell becomes specialized means that it becomes specialized in a particular function. Like, for example, you go to doctors who specialized, a child specialist, maybe, I don't know, the bone specialist, whatever the case is. Inshallah, we will be talking about examples in this. And then finally, inside the cell, okay, now this is very important. You know, A plus B gives you C plus D. That's a very crude way of representing what a chemical equation would look like. I'm sure you people understand that the thing on the left-hand side of any chemical equation are, what do we call them? Products? That's the question I'm asking. What do we call them?
Reactants.
Reactants bhi kehte hain, shabash. We also call them substrates. Okay, we also call them as substrates. And then finally, you have the products. So this is what a typical chemical reaction would look like. Now, the thing that I'm trying to explain is whenever, so for example, if you're sitting in the lab, you have a test tube and you're doing this experiment in a test tube, maybe you can call this thing as a chemical reaction. But when a chemical reaction, now listen to me carefully, this is important. Whenever a chemical reaction is taking place within a cell, within a living cell, you don't call it as a chemical reaction anymore. You give that term, that reaction, the name as metabolic reaction, okay? So a classical example of a typical metabolic reaction is respiration, which releases energy, does not produce energy. That's a common mistake that students make. Whenever you're talking about respiration, you always have to talk about energy being released. I'm stressing energy being released and not produced. So these are some basic points about the cell. In the recent papers, I think in May, June 2018 or 19, this was a question that was asked in section B, which basically asked the candidates to describe and explain the basic features a cell will have. So inshallah, all of this is sufficient for that. Okay, now the following thing that you can see is the transition that we will be making. So we will talk about cells and then we will proceed onto the tissues and then the organs and then the organ system and then the organism. The reason I'm mentioning this here, despite of the fact that this is the last portion of the unit 1 that we will be doing, you call this idea as the levels of organization. Levels of organization. And you know, this is important because virtually in every topic that we will be doing, let it be transport in humans, let it be transport in plants, we will be talking about cells, tissues, organs, organ system related to that particular topic. Okay, so this is important. Now, The next thing that we're going to talk about is actually the exact animal cell. So now what I'm going to do is, I have this label, but this diagram, but I have deliberately left out a space empty here. So what I'm going to do is, let me first convert my laptop into the tablet mode. I'm going to draw an animal cell with my own hands. I know some of you might be thinking, will in the exam, will we be ever asked to draw an animal cell? Well, the answer is no. But there have been instances where you have been asked to draw bits and pieces of something that has been already drawn. So it's a very good thing that if you draw all along with me, and inshallah, what we're going to draw is not going to be very difficult. Trust me, it's going to be very easy. So I'm going to draw a typical animal cell that is catered for your level. So we're not going into details. Okay. So the very first thing, okay, by the way, let me label this thing as the animal cell. Bacho, are we good so far? Any confusions, any problems, any questions so far? I hope you're all set. Bacho, मैं आपसे पूछ रहा हूँ. Are we good so far?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
सर हमने ना प्रोटोप्लाज्म के बारे में पढ़ा था कि उसमें
Okay.
होता है
Okay, I'll come to that.
nucleus.
Okay, I'll come to that. Protoplasm is a collective term that is given to the nucleus, the cytoplasm, collectively. Okay, so it's not what you're saying is not something different. It's a collective word that we talk about. I'll talk about that just in a minute. So the first thing that you can see as a boundary is known as the cell membrane. The cell membrane. Now, there are some things that we need to know about the cell membrane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down some bullet points as we see all of this. So what do we need to know about the basic cell membrane? The first thing that we need to know is that it is made up of, it is too thick. Okay, it is made up of, chemically composed of, chemical composition is lipids and proteins. Lipids are fats, just in case if you don't know, lipids and proteins. Okay, so that's the chemical composition of what the cell membrane will be. Some textbooks, they also, instead of writing lipids, they also write phospholipids. That is also fine. Okay, but if you just stick to the word lipids and proteins, that should do, inshallah. Okay, so chemically it is composed of lipids and proteins. We need to understand that this cell membrane is very thin, of course, in comparison to the cell wall that we will be talking about in the plant cells, and then it's extremely flexible. And this has implications, which inshallah we will talk about, which means that the animal cell is not that rigid, typical structure. Usually it's round, but it can be of different shape because of the fact that it's extremely flexible. And another important thing is that it forms a barrier. Forms a barrier between the cell and its surroundings, between the cells and its surroundings. Acha, there's one more thing, Bacho, that I want you to understand. Since you guys are seeing my handwriting for the very first time, I hope it's not that bad. And secondly, there will be instances where I will be using abbreviations like between the KIB/W and Kili this sign. This is just to make sure that I save some of my time. And I hope you guys will understand what all of these things mean. Okay, so it forms a barrier between the cell and its surroundings. And it also keeps the contents of the cell inside, keeps the contents of cell inside. All right, and then cell membrane in plant cells is surrounded by, come on, tell me what it is surrounded by in the plant cells. Cell membrane in plant cells is surrounded by what?
Cell wall.
Cell wall, shabash. Cell wall. Okay, there's one very important point that I've deliberately, I haven't mentioned. Who will tell me? The most important feature of a typical cell membrane.
Semi-permeable.
Shabash. It is semi-permeable. Now, everybody knows that it is semi-permeable, but when you mention this in the exam, you don't qualify this with the correct explanation. So remember, whenever you're talking about cell membrane or an explanation is asked, you have to explain what that means. So what that means is it only allows certain substances to pass through it. Only allows some substances pass through it. You get you? So that's very important. I mean, honestly, the most important point is the one that I've written in the orange. So that's as far as the cell membrane is concerned. Okay. Now, the next important thing is, of course, none other than the nucleus itself. So that thingy in the middle is the nucleus. Okay. What exactly do we need to know about nucleus? Let me make points for that also. For nucleus, we need to know that it controls all of the metabolic activities of the cell, controls all metabolic reactions. Let's put it this way, metabolic reactions inside the cell. And then the most important, it contains those thread-like structures. What are they called?
Chromosomes?
Shabash, they are known as chromosomes. Good. Chromosomes, okay? Of course, the detail of which we will talk about in the last topic, but there's some things that we need to know. Let me give you an example. If I were to ask you, what's the chemical composition of chromosomes? Well, wait, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of these names like chromosome, DNA. They are exchangeable terms, but yet they are different in meaning. Can anybody tell me what's the difference between a chromosome and a DNA? Let me give you an example. I'm using a table at the moment. I'm sitting down on the table. I'm sitting down on the table. That's a table which is made up of wood. So can I say that that's my table? And then can I say that's wood? It's technically not incorrect to say it's wood, but what we need to understand is that the name is table, okay? And the chemical composition is wood. Similarly, the chemical composition of chromosomes is DNA. So DNA is the chemical composition. What does that mean? That the DNA is, the chromosome is made up of DNA, okay? And what exactly does DNA have? There is, again, this thing that we need to have an idea of, and you can simply explain that they carry instructions to make proteins, okay? They carry instructions to make proteins. And majority of the proteins that are made in the cells are usually enzymes, okay? Of course, there are other proteins also, but usually they're enzymes, okay? And we also know that the chromosomes are only visible during cell division. Chromosomes only visible during cell division. Okay? All right. So that's as far as what we need to know about the nucleus. Okay, coming to the next thing, I think it's fairly simple. That's the cytoplasm. Let me use a different ink. That will just add good colors. Okay, please stop mentioning this in the exam that it's a jelly-like structure. Yes, everybody knows it's a jelly-like structure, but trust me, I mean, that is grade 7, 8 level. Stop just mentioning that in the exam. And that's, I mean, honestly, the first thing that you hear from a student whenever we're talking about cytoplasm is it's a jelly-like substance. Well, guess what? Yes, it is, but that point will honestly bring no benefit to us. So it mostly contains water, mostly has water, okay? And then it contains organelles. Contains organelles. This is very important. What are organelles? ये अंदर जितनी भी चीजें हम देखेंगे like mitochondria and all of that stuff, chloroplast in case of plant cells, all of them are known as organelles, okay? And The cytoplasm is a site of almost all of the metabolic reactions. Okay, metabolic reactions, and it also contains enzymes. Because so that is as far as what we need to know about the cytoplasm. Is there anything that we're missing in the animal cell? What is the? Who will tell me what is this? Yes.
Mitochondria.
Shabash, that's the mitochondria. Good. So let me write that down here for you. Mitochondria. Again, there is some detail that we need to know about the mitochondria. So let's also talk about that before we proceed. So let me use this ink. Okay. Now, mitochondria, you need to remember, is the site for a very important reaction known as respiration. Okay. It is the site for respiration. And, and we say that energy is released. Energy is released. And this is so important. I want to highlight this with a yellow color. You always have to use the word released whenever you're talking about energy. Never, ever write the word produced. Okay. All right. So energy is released from mitochondria as a result of respiration, released because of respiration. TKG. Yes, that's basically as far as what we need to know about the mitochondria. Okay, so more or less, these are the 1, 2, 3, and 4 things we should be knowing about the animal cell. Okay, I hope all of what I've talked about is nothing new for everybody. But again, I've tried to summarize and give you all of the main points that basically you need to know as far as this particular topic is concerned. Now, with regards to the plant cell, now let me quickly show you some other diagrams. I hope all of you have taken note of these points. For those of you who still haven't, they can inshallah get back to the notes once I give you this PDF, inshallah, at the end of the lesson. Now, I want you to appreciate this 3-dimensional diagram that this cell is showing. There are many things that this diagram is showing that are actually not part of our syllabus. I'm just going to cross them out. We don't need to know what Golgi bodies is. We don't need to know what membrane receptor is. Yes, we need to know what mitochondria is. Generally, you need to know this entire structure. That's the nucleus, okay? Of course, they're going into details like nucleolus and nucleus, but again, don't get yourself concerned with this too much. And then, of course, we have the cell membrane. Again, endoplasmic reticulum, not concerned at your level. And then again, okay, now, wait, I just want to jump the gun. No, let's not jump the gun. Now, there is this plant cell. Now, all of us know that the plant cell is very different from animal cells. Okay, it's 8:28. I'm gonna, as I told you last night, that during my 1-hour class, it's my usual norm that I take a deliberate break just for 1 minute, literally 60 seconds. And the purpose for that is just so that you can stretch, go get a glass of water, relax, stand up. Even if you don't feel like standing up, just stand up, take a walk, and then sit back, okay? So I'm ending the meeting. I want all of you to rejoin within a minute and just go and get a glass of water and feel some fresh so that inshallah we can resume and finish off the remaining half an hour that we have. Thank you. Please rejoin in a minute.